A man rescues a captive mermaid on the battlefield. He plans to tame and keep her as a pet, but when the mermaid leaves the water, she becomes severely dehydrated. In her weakened state, she seems as if she might pass away any second. In a moment of panic, the man grabs his canteen and desperately splashes water on her. To his surprise, the little mermaid's beautiful complexion returns instantly. As it turns out, a certain Grand Duke had orchestrated a rebellion, and the Emperor was furious. He sent Keelan to eliminate Baron Barton's entire family. Corpses filled the entire Baron's mansion. Keelan walked coldly towards Baron Barton. The man looked at everything in disbelief, but his son had already fallen to the ground first. He let out a scream. "Why, what did we do wrong? Why are you being so cruel to our family?" Keelan's expression remained unchanged, and the man became anxious. "What rebellion? You know this has nothing to do with us. We were framed. And you've seen my loyalty to His Majesty all these years? I don't know much about what you're saying. I only know His Majesty ordered me to eliminate Baron Barton. So you can stop resisting now." The man remained unmoved, cursing Keelan more excitedly. "You're just the Emperor's dog. As your former master, I feel sorry for you. I curse you to pay for your killings. You'll go to hell." The man felt extremely irritated. He took up his sword and cut him down. "I told you not to resist. At least that way you could go to hell with dignity." Keelan looked at the room behind the man. Suddenly becoming interested, it was filled with various animal skins and treasures the man had collected. He couldn't help but find it laughable. "Talking about me going to hell, yet none of your own deeds could be forgiven." A large red cloth blocked Keelan's view. He curiously pulled down the cloth, and unexpectedly, inside was a beautiful mermaid. "Sir, are you in there? We've mostly cleared the scene. Keep your voice down, sir." "That's a fish. No, to be precise. It's a mermaid. I heard Baron Barton liked collecting rare treasures. I didn't expect him to have caught a legendary mermaid, sir. Collecting itself isn't a problem, but legend says if you harm a mermaid, you'll be killed by it. Perhaps Baron Barton's death is related to this." "You're wrong. He died because he planned a rebellion. It has nothing to do with the fish." The mermaid Milu curiously watched Keelan, making some incomprehensible sounds. Keelan wanted to pack up everything here. Anything living on this land belonged to His Majesty. "But sir, does the mermaid belong to His Majesty too?" "Of course. Go check the situation in the other rooms." "I heard they seem to be leaving." The little mermaid became somewhat panic-stricken, looking around at the tank. Just as Keelan and the others were discussing their next move, the mermaid's body crashed against the tank. Keelan watched her playfully, while Yinan was quite puzzled by the mermaid's behavior, saying she was trying to attack them, but clearly doing this would hurt herself first. "I don't know what she's trying to do, but I think she wants to go to hell to see her old master." Keelan raised his sword approaching the tank. "Sir, are you planning to kill her?" "Why not? Didn't His Majesty say to eliminate everyone in the castle?" "But sir, wait." Keelan ignored his subordinate's calls and insisted on swinging his sword at the tank. In an instant, the tank shattered. The mermaid tightly grabbed his collar. Her entire body fell into his embrace. Their eyes met, and Keelan stared at the mermaid's eyes. Momentarily losing himself, he raised his hand and gently stroked her eyes. The little mermaid stared blankly at Keelan, her hands awkwardly moving on his chest. Keelan called his subordinate Ian. "Go put this mermaid in a tank and pack it up to take away. This way there shouldn't be any problems." After they left, Keelan stood alone in the room, lost in memories, to be precise. This was his second time entering here, however. The first impression was quite poor. At that time, Baron Barton had recovered the Barton Kingdom, merging it into what is now the Barton Duchy. The man submitted before the Duke. Keelan watched all this happening with lifeless eyes, while his former master Baron Barton looked quite proud. He humiliatingly told him to watch carefully. Keelan smashed the statue the man was so proud of on the table. These damn memories always made him irritated. "Sir, the mermaid has been brought to you. You just told me to put her in a tank. But she has legs now. She turned like this after the water dried up. I didn't expect this fish could mimic humans." It seems Baron Barton was quite good at collecting. Keelan lifted the little mermaid's head, finding many scars on the mermaid's body. He felt somewhat unhappy, turning to question Ian. "With so many scars on her body, is this how you treat spoils of war?" "Ian, I told you to take good care of her. Sir, you misunderstand. The mermaid was like that from the start. When we took her out of the water, she was already covered in scars. Perhaps Baron Barton did it. Legend says mermaid tears turn into pearls. I think Baron Barton must have used a whip to torture the mermaid to make her cry tears. Otherwise, it can't be explained, Little Mermaid. Can you hear what I'm saying? Did your former master have such habits?" The Little Mermaid's body kept trembling, but her eyes were clearer and more beautiful than the sea. Keelan once again felt pity for her. He quite liked the Little Mermaid's eyes, seemingly sensing the man meant no harm. The Little Mermaid opened her mouth, making incomprehensible sounds. Ian hurriedly urged Keelan to step back. He was quite puzzled why everyone suddenly became alert. "Sir, I apologize. Legend says mermaid voices can bewitch people's souls. Enough. Stop talking about legends. You've already interfered with me before. But sir, we should still be cautious. I'm hungry. The mermaid, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. Ian and the others wanted to step forward but were stopped by Keelan. I'm hungry. The little mermaid carefully grabbed his clothes. She was actually saying she was hungry. I'm hungry. I want feed. The little mermaid gently requested while holding Keelan's pants leg. Ian, did you hear that? This fish actually spoke. This is quite interesting. It seems our spoils of war are quite fascinating. Ian, aren't you curious what will happen when we bring her back to the Empire? And so following Keelan's request, they set off for the return journey with the mermaid. The ship was about to enter headwind waters. Keelan quickly commanded to raise the rear sails. Someone leisurely strolled over, sir. This journey has been quite long. We not only subdued the Western nomads but also successfully suppressed Baron Barton's rebellion. After half a year, we're finally returning to Tristan. Ian, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't beat around the bush. Yes, sir, it's about that mermaid. We're about to enter the Persian Sea. Don't you think we should release her there? Besides, didn't His Majesty order not to leave anyone from Baron Barton's domain alive? But that's not a person, just a fish. I want to keep her as a pet. What pet? Speaking of which, what is my fish doing now? Ian led Keelan to the mermaid. The little mermaid was hiding in a corner, her body constantly trembling. What's wrong with her? Maybe she's too confined. She keeps tearing at her clothes. But her complexion is also. Didn't I tell you to feed her before we left Baron Barton's? About that, I'm not sure what happened. I gave her all the fish left in the castle. That barrel of raw fish I found in the mermaid's room. I assumed that was her food, so I gave it to her. Though come to think of it, eating raw fish is normal. A mermaid couldn't possibly drink soup and eat fried food like humans. Keelan walked to the little mermaid. Just stay still and don't move. He put his finger in the mermaid's mouth. The mouth temperature was normal, but looking at her complexion, she seemed about to die. This is too strange. Sir, what should we do? Should we just release her back into the deep sea? She needs water. What are you standing there for? Go get water, but she's thirsty and we've prepared water for her to drink. But even when we put it in front of her, she won't drink. Keelan snatched the water bottle from the maid's hand. Ian, she's a mermaid. Don't you know they need something more than water? Saying this, he poured the water from the bottle all over the little mermaid. Miraculously, the mermaid, who had been dying, immediately regained her vitality, blinking her eyes innocently as she looked at Keelan. How are you feeling? Are you better? The little mermaid shyly raised her head, muttering incomprehensible words. Call Third Fu to come check on her. Then let me know when she's better. With that, he was about to leave the room. The little mermaid panicked. She crawled on the ground, using her last bit of strength to grab his pants. What are you doing? I don't want to keep such a weak pet. The little mermaid climbed up his body, cupping his face, using words learned from somewhere she spoke. Don't go. Then collapsed on Keelan. Deep in the ocean lived a mysterious mermaid family. They would go searching for lovers after coming of age. At the height of their love, they would kill their partner and return to the sea. The little mermaid didn't quite understand then. But her companions told her she would understand when she met the right person. That day, when the little mermaid saw the handsome Keelan through the fish tank, she thought he might be that right person from her memories, but still couldn't understand. She followed her mother's teachings that finding a lover would lead to having beautiful babies. Unfortunately, on her first voyage, she was captured by evil humans. That memory was very painful. The little mermaid woke up startled from her dream, unexpectedly finding herself safely lying in a water tank. She excitedly cupped up the familiar smell of the ocean, finally seeing her familiar home again. I think I will be reborn. Keelan quietly observed the little mermaid from the side, surprised that she had regrown her tail. The little mermaid noticed him too. She happily swam to the edge of the tub, excited, wanting to ask the man if he had been helping find water for her. She was grateful for everything he had done for her, but didn't know how to use her tongue to speak. Little mermaid, are you feeling better now? Then it wasn't in vain that I had Ian work hard getting water from the sea. Keelan gently touched her forehead with his finger. The little mermaid was obedient. You can understand what I'm saying, right? Legend says if you harm a mermaid, you will be killed by them. That is an age-old death curse. But looking at this little mermaid's innocent appearance, she probably doesn't even know what a curse is. Such an innocent thing. The little mermaid gazed at her reflection in the water, happy like a child discovering a new world playing in the water. Keelan tentatively took out the dagger from his waist, slowly approaching the little mermaid's tail. At such a sudden move, the little mermaid felt anxious, looking at Keelan with an innocent expression. After hesitating, she tentatively reached out and grabbed the dagger. What do you think that is? Keelan was speechless at this naive little mermaid, but the little mermaid was extremely happy to have grabbed the thing in his hand. Seeing such a beautiful smile, Keelan remembered the mermaid legend his father had told him. Mermaids are particularly beautiful creatures, but they are best at using their songs to bewitch humans, creating false illusions for them. Enough to drive people mad, just like my current state. While Keelan was lost in thought, the Little Mermaid pulled apart the knife's blade, looking at the sharp object. The Little Mermaid showed a dumbfounded expression. Keelan was somewhat angry. Let go. I said let go. He pulled forcefully, accidentally hurting the Little Mermaid. Only then did the Little Mermaid understand that thing could hurt people. Keelan was really irritated. It seems after returning I'll have to teach her to speak first. Her vocabulary is more pitiful than a parrot's. Keelan left the room uninterested. The Little Mermaid didn't want him to leave, thinking it was probably because she couldn't communicate that he was unhappy. So she decided to learn to speak properly. After sailing in the waters for so many days, Keelan's group finally reached the Empire, dragging a sealed large box behind them. Soldiers curiously asked Ian what it was. Superior orders forbid disclosure. Ian remained silent. But there was something else that made people unhappy. These welcoming citizens looked very afraid. As if we came to conquer them rather than return victorious. Rumors say whoever meets the Lord's eyes will turn to ashes. We should thank the former emperor for giving the Lord the title of Death God of the Empire. But these are all rumors. People will soon forget about these things. Everything will develop in a good direction. The commotion outside similarly attracted the Little Mermaid. She secretly poked her head out from the water tank under the curtain. Annie was about to go to the kitchen, but was stopped by other maids. They showed mocking attitudes. You going to the kitchen at this time? Looks like it's to prepare food for that one. You must be tired having to prepare food for her every day. Annie politely said she wasn't that tired, but they didn't quite believe it. Instead, they continued more intensely. All right, we all know. These days the staff have been discussing that the Lord brought back a mermaid. Legend says mermaids can kill people with just their song. No, to be precise, hearing their voice would cause death. Annie, is this true? Annie was really speechless at these people, actually asking such foolish questions. If hearing a mermaid's voice would cause death, she would have been dead long ago. Annie knocked on the door and carried a bucket of food into the room. Miss, I'm Annie. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. The Little Mermaid was delighted to see Annie, trying to greet her. And, hello, miss, it's not an Anne, it's Annie, all right. And it is. Annie was quite helpless. No matter how many times she taught Miss, she always got her name wrong, staying in the water every day eating raw food. Miss, here you go. Seeing you enjoyed the squid before I prepared this for you. Mylu took the squid, feeling sweet bubbles in her heart. Thank you. Annie was excited hearing her respond so correctly this time, clapping her hands together happily for her, however. At this moment, the main door suddenly opened a crack. The Little Mermaid nervously looked on. Annie noticed her anticipation. Miss, are you waiting for someone? Waiting? Waiting means asking if there's someone you want to see. Thinking about it, in your first month here, Earl Ian often brought you food and water, so miss, are you waiting for Earl Ian? The Little Mermaid's mind flashed to Keelan's silhouette. Mistakenly thinking he was Ian, shyly lowered her head and admitted it. Annie looked at her surprised. Oh my miss, are you blushing? But miss, what do you like about him? Is it his handsome face or his glorious status? The Little Mermaid didn't quite understand Annie's words. Just shyly told her she liked Ian. Annie didn't understand. Ian hadn't come to see her for a long time. Why did she still like him? Well, please turn around. I'll help you with your hair, to be honest. The Little Mermaid didn't know why either. Just like her sister said, the day she met Keelan, she knew he would be her love. As long as she could see him, no matter how long, she was willing to wait. After all, she had waited who knows how long for her destined person. So what did this little bit of time matter now, miss? Your hair is done. Wait for me a moment. I'll go prepare some other things for you. The Little Mermaid put her mouth in the water, boredly blowing bubbles. Sister told her the appearance of her destined person required waiting. At this time, the door opened with a sound. The Little Mermaid thought Annie had returned. Happily calling Annie's name, however, she saw an angry Keelan instead. Who are you waiting for? You look quite ridiculous like this. Still can't speak. Are you mute? And your tail is gone too. The Little Mermaid lifted her legs, stammering here. Keelan understood her words. Placing his hand on her legs, actually, if he hadn't mentioned it, the Little Mermaid hadn't noticed that since coming here her tail hadn't appeared, but she probably knew why this was so, because the water here was different from the sea. The Little Mermaid cupped up some water to show Keelan, muttering. Keelan was completely puzzled, not knowing what she was saying. Seeing he didn't understand, the Little Mermaid became anxious. Ian. Who? What? You're calling me Ian? Before Keelan could get angry, he was suddenly pushed away forcefully by Annie. Annie protected the Little Mermaid beside her, loudly questioning who the man was, why he dared appear in a lady's room, firmly ordering him to leave immediately. Keelan found it amusing. You're ordering me to leave? Are you sure you're talking to me? I'm very sure. You madman. The Little Mermaid, seeing the situation wasn't right, immediately reminded Annie. Only then did Annie realize the man before her was the Lord. Keelan was quite displeased. He didn't even know when his mansion had made such new rules, needing others' permission to see his own property. Sir, I'm so sorry, I'm new to working here. I didn't recognize you. I'm really sorry, I truly deserve death. Annie trembled as she knelt on the ground. But this couldn't dispel Keelan's anger. He drew his blade and walked step by step toward Annie. I know you've worked very well, but it's your fault for not knowing your own master. The little mermaid watched in horror, rushing up at the moment the man was about to strike. Ian. No, the little mermaid knew that thing he took out would hurt people. She didn't like him doing this, thank you. At such times you shouldn't say thank you. You need to beg me. The little mermaid confusedly said please, which took Keelan by surprise. It seems you've already learned basic words like food, so you're not mute after all. And you've even put on some weight. Keelan pulled her from the ground into his arms. Haha, you now know to jump into my arms. Very good, my little mermaid. But what should I do now? You stopped my sword, so I should kill that maid. The little mermaid didn't quite understand the meaning of kill. But Annie had already been frightened to tears, kneeling on the ground desperately begging for mercy. Keelan ignored her. He thought of an idea. Try to say spare her. If you say it in your own words, I will spare her. Follow me, say I beg you to spare her. The little mermaid understood his meaning. Gathering her courage, she said those words. Please spare her. Keelan was about to praise her for being good, but was stopped by the name Ian. He irritably pushed the little mermaid away. I am a man who keeps his promises. Since she said those words, I'll spare your life. But from now on, you must teach her to speak better. I don't want my person still not knowing their master's name. I hope I won't hear the name Ian from her mouth again. Ian somehow got the news and immediately came before Keelan. Sir, I heard you went to see that fish. Your news travels fast, sir. Was that maid also very rude to you? It's my fault for not training her well. That fish begged me to spare her today. Isn't that strange? I let that maid live. Normally people who beg for survival like that. I would definitely not be merciful. Strange thing is, I felt different from the first time I saw that fish. Keelan took up the medicine in his hand and drank it. Ian, if you have nothing else, then leave. Sir, I see you've been drinking medicine more and more frequently lately. I'm worried too much will harm your body. Although this is addictive, it's better than me not sleeping for 4 consecutive days, right? Ian, I don't want to say things twice. Yes, sir. Actually, Keelan didn't want to be like this either, but whenever he closed his eyes, those scenes of people begging would appear in his mind. He was sick of such dark nights. The unintentionally kept Little Mermaid brought new vitality. Since Annie became the Little Mermaid's personal maid, she learned human language and behavior every day. Miss, this way. The Little Mermaid carefully walked holding the wall whenever she was about to give up. Annie would cheer her on from the side. So surprisingly, the Little Mermaid showed improvement compared to yesterday. Now can we try walking outside? I'm so excited, Miss. Do you want to practice more? It's really heartwarming. I can't help but think of my brothers and sisters. I have a big family. I'm the eldest sister. There are 3 younger siblings at home. Because we were poor, our parents went out to work, while I took on the burden of caring for them. Back then I changed their diapers, watched them learn to walk, although they didn't listen to what I said, which was a bit heartbreaking. But they are my family. I love them very much. If you hadn't stopped the Lord last time, I might never see them again. Miss, thank you so much. What's going on here? A woman in red was arguing with maids at the door. Annie carefully led the Little Mermaid to hide in a corner to eavesdrop. Madam, I'm very sorry. We have our own orders. The Lord instructed to send you away first thing in the morning. That's the chief maid. It seems the noisy lady is the one invited by the Lord yesterday, Annie. What is invited? It means that woman spent the night with the Lord overnight. The Little Mermaid had heard this word before. Mermaid's sister said, if you spend a night with your destined one, you can have babies. It's rumored that the Lord always sends away invited women the next morning. No one has broken this rule yet. It seems this news is true, miss. The palace is so big. Let's go explore somewhere else, Annie. Wait a moment. Annie cheerfully pulled her toward other places. It's quite a pity. She still wanted to ask that woman what it felt like to spend the night with the Lord. In distant memories, the teacher was arrested by the crown prince as a traitor. He ordered himself to kill his own mentor. But Keelan trembled holding the sword and couldn't bring himself to do it. The crown prince became furious. If you don't kill him, then you'll be the one killed. Keelan couldn't believe that was his teacher. How could he do such a thing? Keelan, remember from this moment on, he is no longer your teacher. He is a traitor. He almost leaked information harming the entire country. No, your highness, this news isn't true. I beg you to spare him. Emperor, your majesty, Keelan begged his emperor brother. Not only did he not get a response, he was slapped hard. Keelan, you are unworthy of being a royal member like this. I now order you as emperor to kill him or kill yourself. This is the only way you can prove your loyalty to me, otherwise you have no choice. But this isn't true. Teacher, how could you possibly be a traitor? You taught me so earnestly. How could you casually disregard our people? The teacher knelt numbly on the ground without any response. Keelan became anxious. Please quickly deny it. This way I can do my best to help you. Your highness, please stop resisting. You should follow his majesty's orders. Continue. Traitors will always be punished. Your highness, remember, that the sword is the ruler's scepter. It can help you better establish relationships with court officials. It's not just a symbol of killing and harm. Learning swordsmanship can better protect the people. Your Highness, you must live on. With no choice, Keelan killed his teacher. That was a terrible memory. Keelan irritably sat up from the cushion. Miss, wait, you need to put on shoes before running. Sweet laughter from the Little Mermaid came through the window. This made Keelan's mood improve somewhat. Endless nights were sleepless nights. Keelan had had enough of such darkness. He angrily smashed the bottle full of medicine. That medicine had completely lost its effect on insomnia. Over these years, no matter what medicine Keelan took, nothing worked. But he didn't want to resign himself to living with darkness. He hated it so much. At this time, the Little Mermaid's laughter from the day echoed in his mind. It seemed her voice could provide relief. Historical records state mermaids are very beautiful creatures, but one must never be deceived by their appearance, otherwise their songs will steal your soul, since their voice is powerful enough to steal souls. Keelan suspected this might help with his insomnia. After all, there were no other options now. Heavens, Your Highness, what happened here? Seeing the room in chaos, Ian was particularly worried about Keelan's state. Ian, you've come at just the right time. Go bring the mermaid here immediately. The Little Mermaid swayed, unsteadily holding the soldier's hand. But having just learned to walk a little, she couldn't keep up, almost stumbling. What happened? Can we wait? The soldier paused, hurriedly turning away his face. Sorry, we don't have time. His Highness urgently summoned you. The Little Mermaid didn't quite understand, could only follow the soldier. When they reached the doorway, the soldier told her she needed to go the rest of the way herself. Enter the room, through the living room, turn right and you'll reach it. Did it take you very long? Keelan immediately saw the Little Mermaid holding onto various pieces of furniture as she advanced. It's actually Keelan. The Little Mermaid was very happy. Have you learned to walk now? Walking, yes, I practiced walking a lot. Keelan walked to the bed and sat down. In that case, continue. Try walking to my side. Because of his words, the Little Mermaid became serious. She carefully took small steps. Her body wasn't very stable. She almost fell. Keelan found her like this particularly adorable, amusingly watching her every move. What are you trying to do? Keep coming. The Little Mermaid wasn't angry either, puffing up her cheeks and standing up, then taking another step and another. After who knows how long, she finally walked to Keelan's front. She was happy like a child, loudly sharing her joy with Keelan. I succeeded. Keelan quickly pulled her to the bedside, embarrassingly pressing her beneath him, lifting one of the Little Mermaid's feet to kiss. You came from so far. About how many steps did you take? His actions directly stunned the Little Mermaid, her face red like a love-struck young girl. Keelan asked again, did you walk a lot of steps? No, I'm fine. The Little Mermaid, with one foot constrained, awkwardly replied, very good, in that case, sing a song for me. Afraid the Little Mermaid wouldn't understand, he repeated, right here, sing a song for me. The Little Mermaid blinked her innocent big eyes, staring blankly. I told you to sing. Why are you just staring? Keelan put his finger in her mouth. She had grown teeth, everything was normal. Don't you know what singing is? Is it because you've never learned? Or because mermaid songs bring curses, you're afraid something will happen so you weren't taught? That maid, though verbally agreed to try her best, but is just like everyone else. Believing in their hearts that mermaids are monsters from the deep sea, she will surely harm humans. How amusing. Those people only dare keep you in a fish tank. How pretentious. When Keelan said pretentious, the Little Mermaid had a reaction. You understand this word? Pretentious is mermaid language and means lullaby. It seems the rumor that mermaids can speak ancient language is true. Very good, since you know. Then sing a lullaby for me. Keelan's hand kept caressing the Little Mermaid's face. The Little Mermaid's heart pounded uncontrollably with shyness. What are you stunned for? Hurry up and sing. The Little Mermaid hesitated until Keelan put his hand on her mouth. Only then did she open her mouth to hum softly. The song was ethereal and pleasant, unlike a song, more like legendary sorcery that could awaken memories from long ago. Back then, Keelan really liked watching by the sea. He would sit for an entire day, though nominally watching the sea continuously. Actually, what he really wanted was to sink to the bottom and just die carelessly like that. The mermaid's song was like new motivation, awakening his self in the sea to live again. Keelan probably understood why he brought her back. Legends truly can never be trusted. But he really wanted to see the mermaid demonstrate her ability to lure people to death, so he unhesitatingly cupped the Little Mermaid's head and kissed her. This really embarrassed the Little Mermaid. She looked at the man with puzzled eyes. What is this? Keep singing your song. I didn't tell you to stop, so continue. When he woke up again, it was the next day. The Little Mermaid sat up first in bed, staring blankly around the room. Only when she saw Keelan did she remember she had slept here yesterday. The unworldly Little Mermaid didn't understand what yesterday's kiss meant, just felt it was ticklish, her heart beating fast. She attributed this strange fondness to meeting her love. Bored, she reached out to touch Keelan's mouth, but unexpectedly immediately startled him awake. Keelan instinctively thought it was an attack, violently grabbing the Little Mermaid's neck. The Little Mermaid's maid painfully let out a cry. "Let me go." Fortunately, the cry awakened the man. Keelan realized his impropriety, quickly releasing his hand. He looked surprised toward the window outside. The sky has actually brightened. "I wasn't dreaming." The Little Mermaid looked at him in astonishment. "You used your lullaby to save my soul. If this is true, you're quite useful indeed. From now on, your name will be Xiaye." Annie saw the mermaid lady return and excitedly ran toward her, anxiously looking around to check if she was injured. After confirming she was fine, urged her to take a bath. The Little Mermaid glanced at the ribbon on her bottom. She was still in yesterday's state. Annie noticed something wrong and quietly asked, "Miss, did nothing happen between you and Lord Keelan last night?" "Last night?" Thinking of last night's shy feeling, the Little Mermaid leaned and gave Annie a kiss on the cheek. Annie was caught off guard by this sudden kiss, indignantly telling the Little Mermaid she couldn't do this.
The Little Mermaid obediently nodded. "Last night was just like this. Heavens, miss, you mean you kissed with His Highness last night? Kiss, kiss. Oh my, it means mouth to mouth. Miss, remember in the future, absolutely never do this with others. What you just did is called kissing." This is very important and special. It can only be done with someone you mutually with someone you like. Then Keelan treats me as someone he likes too. That's why he gave me a name, Mellow Xia. The Little Mermaid softly called out her name. "Annie, my name is Yai. I'm so happy I have a name and also have a loved companion." Hearing His Highness say he slept last night, Ian surprisingly dropped the documents in his hand. "Your Highness, did I hear wrong? You really slept last night?" "Yes, and very deeply. Just how was this achieved? I can't really say. After all, in the 5 years since the former emperor passed away, my insomnia medication hasn't worked. Was it because of the mermaid? If it really was the mermaid, then summon her again tonight. Isn't that why you came at this time?" "I just asked you what Duke Hyzina has been doing lately." Ian nervously picked up the fallen documents. "Sorry for my oversight. Your Highness, Duke Hyzina has doubled the soldiers in his domain, expected to triple by year-end. At the palace or capital, except for the former emperor's loyal nobles, most have started making small moves, almost all indicating willingness to join him." "Oh, is that so? Looks like this matter is more urgent than previously discussed." "I think so too. Your Highness want to send people to the Duke's place." "No need, since we'll meet in 2 months anyway. Why go to such trouble? Let's wait and see first." "Yes, I know what to do, Ian. You don't mind about the Count's side." "Your Highness, what do you want to say? Ian, you really don't mind becoming a traitor with someone like me. The defense struggle has always been very dangerous. Kylon actually didn't want Ian to join the rebellion with him." Ian was quite helpless, saying everything very firmly. "Your Highness, this is my own careful choice. Besides, you are only my vice commander, not my master. Your Highness's choice is my intention. I will follow you until the end." Keelan smiled at the corner of his mouth, quite satisfied. "Ian, thank you. If there's nothing else, you can leave first." "Yes, Your Highness, rest well, but wait, continue to call the Little Mermaid over tonight. That fish is indeed very useful. Her talent is excellent too." After Ian left, Keelan leisurely lit a cigarette. He began to wonder how many times he needed to hear the mermaid's song to find eternal peace. "Your Highness wants the mermaid lady to go over. The guard came to get Shia like yesterday." Annie was stunned for a moment before reacting. She excitedly told Shia, "Miss C, I was right. His Highness would surely summon you tonight. Fortunately, I did your hair in advance. I bet Lord Keelan will really like it." The Little Mermaid tilted her head curiously, wondering what that was, miss. "Be careful on your way." Annie excitedly watched as Miss was taken away by the soldiers. Perhaps due to the Lord's regard for Xie, the soldiers' care for her was much more careful than last time. Annie watched all this contentedly. For the mermaid lady to spend several nights with the Lord in his chamber and still remain healthy in the palace, this was a first.
The Little Mermaid opened the door. Strangely, the room was dark and she couldn't see anything inside. "Keelan, where are you?" Xia, Keelan emerged from behind. He embraced her suddenly. As a playful punishment, he gently pinched her cheek. "Why are you so late today?" Then his hand traced along the Little Mermaid's waist, but stopped when he encountered the troublesome clothing. "You're wearing so many layers again. How bothersome." Xia was completely embarrassed. When his hand was at her waist, she felt very uncomfortable. Keelan noticed this. "Would you like me to help?" The Little Mermaid shyly nodded. Keelan removed the pearl necklace from her neck. He buried his face in the Little Mermaid's neck. "Your usual scent is gone." That maid always does things she shouldn't eat. After a moment of silence, he finally said, "Xia, why don't you take off these clothes too?" "Take off clothes?" The Little Mermaid didn't understand what this meant. Keelan sighed helplessly, saying he didn't want to keep a useless pet, but he still helped her remove the dress. As the constraining dress slipped off, The little mermaid blinked her eyes and blushed. Kilong pouted disapprovingly. Don't tell me you're still feeling shy. No, I feel wonderful. My whole body feels so light now. Thank you. You're adorably silly to be happy about such a small thing. If you really want to thank me, you can repay me by doing what you should. He lifted the little mermaid and placed her on his knee. Shia, sing Versailles for me. When the first ray of morning sunlight entered the room, the little mermaid woke up. Recently, she had been spending every day with Kilong, and she was very happy in her heart, but she hadn't received a kiss like last time, which made her a bit disappointed. She sweetly caressed the sleeping Kilong. We've spent the night together. Now I can give birth to little mermaids that look like him. I'm so happy. I hope they come quickly, because his nose and eyes are so beautiful. The little mermaid devotedly placed a kiss on Kilong's forehead. Unexpectedly, the man suddenly woke up. She shyly covered her mouth. Shia, I didn't expect you to do such things. You really make my heart flutter. He held the little mermaid's hand firmly, deciding to give her a small punishment. Don't cover your face. Kilong leaned down to kiss her, and the little mermaid closed her eyes and nuzzled against his lips. The kiss wasn't enough to satisfy Kilong. Let me teach you how to kiss properly, just relax. The flowers in the garden were blooming beautifully. The little mermaid, wearing a pretty dress, rushed eagerly into the flower bed. Annie called out anxiously from behind, Miss, you've forgotten to wear shoes again. I don't want to, they're stuffy. Shia stepped barefoot onto the grass. Seeing a patch of blooming yellow flowers, she became as happy as a silly fish. Annie, the flowers are even prettier than last time. I remember this. Annie told me before these are called freesias. But what's that moving thing up there called? Kilong saw the little mermaid from afar. Shia, are you playing in the garden today? She gently extended her finger, and a butterfly landed on it. What's this moving flower called? Sia, that's not a flower, it's a butterfly. A butterfly. Oh, in your language it's called Psyche, watching the butterfly fly towards the sky. The little mermaid called out the man's name. Kilong. The name wasn't pronounced correctly, and Kilong flicked her forehead in displeasure. I'm happy you remembered my name, but your pronunciation is terrible. Go back and practice more. I'll call your maid to come get you. Go back when you're done playing. Seeing Kilong turning to leave, Shia felt reluctant and hurriedly followed behind him. Wait for me, let's go together. Kilong was quite helpless with such a clingy, silly fish. But since she was his, he could only spoil her. Follow if you want. It's up to you. Being allowed to follow him made Shia extremely happy, completely ignoring Annie's calls. She chased after the man. Kilong arrived at the training grounds, a place where men frequent. Annie was worried. Miss, this is where soldiers train. It's not appropriate for us to be here. If His Highness takes offense, we might be expelled from the palace. But the little mermaid was completely captivated by the new sights, totally ignoring Annie's words. Annie, look over there, there's Kilong. Kilong appeared in front of the soldiers riding a black horse. Speaking of the Grand Duke, Annie's face showed admiration. The Grand Duke is truly a remarkable person. My father is also a soldier at Tristan Castle, and he told me that His Highness is the only commander who personally participates in training every day. All right, training is over for today. Kilong left, and the little mermaid excitedly chased after him. Annie, lost in memories, turned to find that her miss had run off again. She anxiously called out from behind, Miss, please wait. You can't keep following the Grand Duke like this. It's not proper. Whatever you want, miss. What do you mean? Helplessly. Annie followed Shia to the dining hall, where the little mermaid stared at Kilong in the great hall with sparkling eyes. Annie, afraid she would cause trouble, whispered in her ear, Miss, we really can't go in here. Let's return to our room. We'll really be scolded if we're discovered. But why? His Highness is dining with the Count. They must be discussing very serious matters. Food? Isn't that something you can eat? As if on cue? A guard came out from the main entrance. Annie, thinking something was wrong, fell to her knees and apologized. I'm sorry, we'll leave right away. That's not it. His Highness says you're too noisy out here. Just go in directly. Upon hearing this, the little mermaid's eyes filled with hope, while Annie behind her was too shocked to speak. The little mermaid tried to imitate humans by picking up knife and fork. She struggled to cut the cooked fish on her plate. Instead of making it to her mouth, the fish flew into the air. The usually temperamental Grand Duke burst out laughing. Kilong treated her as if she belonged there, discussing business with Ian as usual. This time it will cost about 60 million. But I heard His Majesty the Emperor bought the diamond mine. Your Highness, that mine doesn't have any gems. I don't know why he bought it. I suspect it was Hasna Marquis whispering sweet nothings. You're right, that old man is quite desperate to drain the treasury. The little mermaid made clanking noises as she struggled with the cooked fish on her plate. The noise was too much, and Ian couldn't help but glance over. When will Celta's palace be completed? Ian was distracted by the little mermaid across from him. Suddenly realizing His Highness was questioning him, he awkwardly turned his gaze back and continued, the interior decorations should be finished by early autumn this year. We originally planned to announce it during the National Founding Day, but the nobility is quite displeased with the large personnel changes. It's understandable they're excited to finally break free from the former emperor. But it's good news for Marquise Hasna, yes. This time several neutral families have sided with us. The little mermaid jerked and fidgeted with the food on her plate. Accidentally flipping up a fishbone, Kalong couldn't help but smile. I finally invited you to dinner. I can't let you go hungry. Shia, shall I have the maid bring your usual favorites? Today's food isn't good. The little mermaid shook her head innocently. Ian awkwardly grimaced when he heard Sia say Keelan. That's how you call His Highness's name? Keelan corrected the little mermaid with displeasure. Wrong. The first syllable should be stressed, the latter lighter. The little mermaid tilted her head and tried pronouncing his name again. Looks like we need more practice. If you find the fork uncomfortable, just eat your own way. Don't just sit there, silly. Shia remembered his whatever you want and brightened up. She excitedly picked up the raw fish. She put it in her mouth and ate in big bites, which greatly shocked Ian. Keelan was unfazed. You're eating so heartily. Sha. Is it good? Very delicious. Thank you, Keelan. Ian, continue telling me how many people have decided to defect to us. Ian was truly shocked by what he saw. His Highness was actually raising the mermaid like a pet. These days, wherever Keelan appeared, the little mermaid would follow like a little tail. Ian felt this was inappropriate, but Keelan told him not to interfere. The little mermaid hid behind the door, planning to surprise Keelan. Keelan found it extremely amusing. She actually believes I can't detect her. Isn't this interesting? Your Highness, does this count as interesting? Taming an animal and observing it is quite enjoyable. Your Highness, have you kept pets before? About 10 years ago, there was a fox that was particularly attached to him. Even the master found it very strange. However, Keelan found the little fox's constant following annoying, but despite saying so, at night he still let it sleep in the room with him. Keelan treasured this little fox very much to avoid losing it. He hid the little fox under the bed, repeatedly warning the little one not to come out, because brother would soon come here to hunt. He didn't want the little fox to be caught. But the little fox came out on that very day. The corpse lay cold in the forest. Ian, do you know? When you catch an animal, you must keep it in a sturdy cage. Annie was helpless about the Mrs. Childish behavior. Yet the little mermaid was having great fun. That night, Keelan took Shia to the nearby sea. This delighted the little mermaid greatly. If you're so happy, go closer. What about you? I'll wait for you here. I want to confirm something at the seaside. The little mermaid didn't quite understand. She slowly walked into the sea, then jumped into the ocean. Her slender feet immediately transformed into a fishtail. The man called out harshly, but the little mermaid secretly dove deeper into the sea. His eyes were fierce. Anger reaching its peak, Keelan had ulterior motives this time. He wanted to test if the little mermaid would disobey like the fox did back then. Back then, he had warned the little fox not to come out. But he had overestimated. The little fox eventually ran out and came to the forest on its own. When Keelan found it, it was already dying. He didn't understand why the little fox had come out. At that moment, his brother's hunting party came clanking along. If things continued like this, the little fox would surely be caught by his brother. At that time, the little fox would die a horrible death. A terrible thought occurred to Keelan. He might as well kill the little fox himself. Shia, having received Keelan's permission, happily dove into the sea. Ian was somewhat anxious. Your Highness, the mermaid going into the sea. Don't worry about it. I'm testing if she wants to escape. Shia, who had been swimming in the sea, quickly returned. But as soon as she came ashore, she was roughly grabbed by Keelan. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her fiercely. The movement was too violent, and the little mermaid struggled uncomfortably. However, at this moment Keelan suddenly pressed a dagger against her throat. Do you miss the sea so much that you'd leave me like this? No, I won't leave. I just went to play for a while. I have no intention of leaving, but why should I believe you? I shouldn't have removed your shackles. The triggered Keelong couldn't hear any good words. The little mermaid trembled, not knowing what had happened, but Keelong was very strange now, and she was also very afraid. I let my guard down because you seemed obedient. That was my mistake. Shia, take a good look at the sea. You might never see it again. After saying this, Keelong frantically dragged the little mermaid towards the reef. Ian followed breathlessly. Your Highness, what are you going to do now? Everyone return to the castle. I won't return to the palace tonight, and will stay at the nearby outpost. Go tell the others. Keelong gripped the little mermaid's wrist, tightly all the way. This made her very uncomfortable, and she called out for the man to let go. Instead, he threw the little mermaid onto the bed. Keelong tugged at his collar. With a gloomy face, he approached the little mermaid step by step. Thinking about what was about to happen, Shia's face turned bright red. Keelong pressed the little mermaid down beneath him. The large bed creaked ominously. Shia. What should I do with you? Giving you a collar would be quickly undone, and if I truly locked you up it would be boring. He gently caressed Shia's face. The man's sudden change frightened the little mermaid. Shia, I was the one who named you, so you must obey me. I'll obey you, the little mermaid responded. Somewhat understanding, say you will submit to me, that you'll only follow me. I am yours. The little mermaid obediently said. Keelong wasn't quite satisfied and pressed his finger to her lips, making her repeat, I am yours. Keelong forcefully lifted the little mermaid's chin. Don't act on your own from now on. After saying this, he kissed the little mermaid's mouth. The kiss lasted so long that Shia could barely breathe. She turned her face away in resistance. Unexpectedly, the man's hands started moving downward. Keelong, this isn't right. Although the little mermaid didn't fully understand the pleasure between men and women, she knew that Keelong's current behavior was different from last time. If they continued like this, she would really have mermaid babies. Keelong pulled her to sit on top of him. The little mermaid confusedly asked Keelong in a small voice, Hasn't it ended already? What's ended? Our night is still long. When the little mermaid woke up again, it was already 2 days later. Annie waited nervously by the bedside. Miss, you're finally awake. You haven't woken up for 2 consecutive days. You don't know how worried I was. Are you feeling all right? I'm fine, but where am I? Miss, this is your room. The little mermaid looked around, but couldn't find the man's figure. Where did Keelong go? The Grand Duke isn't here. He went to welcome guests. Annie stammered, seeming to want to hide something. Guests? Yes, that Marquis Hasna has arrived. She is the Grand Duke's fiancée. So, Annie, you mean a male and a female? Yes, they can only marry one person. Swear to God. To be with only this person for life, engagement means before marriage. So Keelong and I also spent the night with that beautiful lady. This is different from marriage. The Grand Duke isn't married yet. He can have such behavior. He's of royal blood. He can be with whoever he wants. I don't understand, Annie. Isn't spending nights with more people good for having more offspring? Oh my goodness, miss. You absolutely cannot say such things. All right, miss. I won't be here this afternoon. The head maid has sent the junior maids on errands. I need to go to the marketplace. The marketplace is outside the castle. It's where many people buy and sell things. Especially now during the autumn harvest Thanksgiving. There are many amazing things and performances. Shia got excited just thinking about it. Annie, I want to go too. No, you must stay in your room and rest today. The little mermaid blinked her eyes and pitifully tried to charm her. Annie, please. Annie really hadn't expected her to use this tactic. In the end, she took the little mermaid out with her. The little mermaid watched the marketplace she had never seen before. She was as excited as a happy child at the carriage window. It's fine, we got Count Lou's permission. After all, we can ride in the carriage thanks to him. We should be grateful to the mermaid, Miss. Anne, what's that with red seaweed on top? Miss, that's a chicken. What's that furry thing up there? That's a bird. That, miss, stop talking. Quickly get back in the carriage. After reaching their destination, Annie decided to split up, leaving Shia to wait while they went to check the shops. Before leaving, they worriedly instructed the guard to watch her carefully. However, the little mermaid, who had just nodded in agreement, soon began wandering the streets alone. Everything here was something Shia had never seen in the castle. It was truly amazing. But then a familiar sound came from the air. That was the unique song of the mermaid family, indicating there were others of her kind nearby. "Miss, you can't wander off alone, wait." That was the voice of a fellow mermaid. Shia must meet them, so she ignored the guard's objections, quickly moving from one end of the street to the other. When she pushed through the crowd, she saw an old woman on the ground, pitifully tugging at a stranger's skirt, saying she was dying. "It's this old woman again. Everyone stay away from her. Her disease is contagious." Judging by the people's attitudes, this wasn't the first time the old woman had appeared here. Shia rushed forward anxiously. "What happened to you? Are you in pain?" The old woman looked up at the voice, and seeming to recognize Shia's identity, excitedly embraced her. "You mean you're not sick, but hungry?" "Yes, very hungry, feeling like I'm dying." "You're one of my kind, right?" "Please help me." Shia nodded shyly, then quickly went to a fish stall. The guard caught up from behind. "Miss, this will cause big trouble. Quickly return to the carriage." "But I need this for my fellow mermaid. She's hungry." "What fellow mermaid?" "Miss, why do you suddenly want fish?" Before they could investigate further, Shia ran off with the fish. At that moment, a carriage drove through the center of the road. Because of the crowd, the driver was forced to stop, cursing angrily. Where did this mad woman come from? "Get out of the way." The nearby crowd held their breath for the little mermaid, the guard desperately calling out to her. However, Shia bravely stood her ground. "Wait, she's just hungry. She must finish eating. Do you know who I am?" The man angrily reached out to use force against the little mermaid. "Take your hand away." A deep male voice rang out at this moment. The man wanted to curse but was intimidated by Keelong's voice. "Didn't you hear what I said? Take your hand away." "Oh, it's the Grand Duke." The first, "I'm terribly sorry." Seeing Keelong, Shia's face unconsciously flushed red. She excitedly ran and hugged him tight. "Keelong, I missed you. I missed you very, very much." Keelong's expression was awkward as he turned his face away. A noblewoman stepped down from the carriage behind him. "Your Highness, it really is you." Keelong pushed the little mermaid aside, striding forward to welcome the noblewoman, Lady Hasna. "Hello, Your Highness, hello. It's embarrassing to meet after so long in such circumstances." "I don't say that. I bear responsibility too. Haha, the Empire's hero is truly extraordinary. I heard you've achieved great merit again recently. I heard you were going to visit the Marquise. Was I too hasty?" "I was just curious. So I wanted to see you quickly." The little mermaid peeked out from behind Keelong to stare at the woman. Keelong's eyes coldly swept past Shia behind him. "I feel that this will soon be my home anyway, but I won't be too impolite." "Right? Not at all. Since that's the case, shall we go together?" "Your Highness would be delighted." The noblewoman glanced at Shia disapprovingly, smiling as she placed her hand on Keelong's arm. "Grand Duke, the first am honored. But this young lady is?" "Could you introduce her?" Shia looked expectantly at Keelong, wanting to see how he would answer. However, she was harshly rebuffed by the words "not necessary." "As you can see, she's just something I keep that often causes trouble." "Indeed. The prettier the animal, the harder it is to raise." Keelong, watching the man walk away. The little mermaid called out anxiously, "Shia, stay put." Keelong coldly threw down these words and left. The little mermaid stared blankly. Keelong's expression today was very strange, but she didn't know what it meant. She touched her chest where there was a painful sensation. At this moment, the old woman behind her suddenly burst into mad laughter. "When the time comes to make your decision, remember to choose the sea." The old woman gripped Shia's wrist tightly. She didn't understand what she meant. For several days after that, Shia sat listlessly in bed. "The weather is so nice today, miss. Are you going to stay in your room again?" "Yes." "Annie, hasn't he come today either?" "I told you. The Grand Duke is very busy lately. He'll come see you soon after he finishes his work." "But Annie, can I go find him myself? Or maybe see him at the marketplace?" These words startled Annie. She waved her hands in panic. "Miss, that's not allowed. Just wait quietly and the Grand Duke will return soon. If you're feeling bored, why don't you go for a walk? The garden has beautiful new roses. Perhaps seeing them will improve your mood." The little mermaid tried visiting the garden. Looking at the brilliantly blooming roses didn't improve her mood. Instead, she missed Keelong even more. The last time in the garden was with Keelong. "Excuse me, could you move aside?" Shia looked up at the voice and saw it was the mysterious woman from that day. She haughtily held a fan while looking at the little mermaid. "Oh my, looking closer, you're someone I know. You remember me, right? I'm delighted to see you again." "What's your name?" His Highness seemed to call you something. My name is Shia. What a unique and beautiful name. Miss Sia, would you like to take a walk together? It was too noisy last time for a proper introduction. So, Miss Sia, which family you're from? Or rather, which country are you from? The little mermaid was confused by these words. She hadn't heard of any of them and didn't understand. Esther walked ahead, muttering about whether it was the kingdom of Laymond or Magellan. The little mermaid understood this sentence, and innocently replied that it wasn't those. She came from Versailles. Hearing this answer, Hasna paused for a moment, knowing that Versailles was a country without sea, a rumored small island where only a few merpeople lived. So you mean you're one of the legendary merpeople? Yes, Shia happily responded. However, this earned a rebuke from Esther's maid, who believed Shia was telling complete lies. Esther didn't show much reaction. Her eyes glanced at Shia's bare feet, combining this with how the Grand Duke had introduced her as his pet animal. She actually believed what Shia said was true. She immediately felt relieved of her previous worries, since Shia was just a mermaid without status. Esther no longer feared her. She rudely lifted Shi's chin with a grand gesture. He's never kept pets before, I was worried earlier. Now thinking about it, since you're a mermaid, it's understandable. Just like how everyone wants to own precious things, I didn't expect His Highness to have such a sentimental side. Esther walked ahead in high spirits. The little mermaid curiously asked her name. I am Esther Hasna, daughter of Marquis Hasna, and I am Grand Duke Keelong's fiancé. This is the last time you'll offend me, my dear Miss Sia. The 3 words fiancé were completely incomprehensible to the little mermaid. She continued to ask if she had spent the night with Keelong. Esther's body froze. Taking Xia's words as provocation, her eyes turned fierce as she completely lost her temper. Sia, you're becoming less interesting by being too presumptuous. You think being noticed by His Highness makes you proud? Or did becoming His Highness's woman make the world different for you? Don't tell me you're already expecting a child. The maid watched anxiously from the side. The foolish Shay hugged her belly, unaware of her hostility, innocently answering, no baby yet, but soon. This only earned greater mockery from Esther. It's all wishful thinking. Sia, you're really pitiful. If you continue like this, it will only lead to your death. Do you know why I allow His Highness's mistresses to be? Empire nobles having mistresses isn't a big deal. What matters is not disturbing the succession order. Rather than questionable character, illegitimate children suffer greater humiliation. Do you think the Grand Duke would welcome your child's birth? You should know His Highness himself bears the stigma of being the former emperor's illegitimate child. You are of no use to His Highness, even if you manage to bear a child. It will die by His Highness's hand. Esther's words struck at Shia's heart, her face growing increasingly grave. Castle affairs led Marquise Hasna to seek an early meeting with Keelong. Your Highness, I heard you met Esther outside the city. So she rushed out to find you. You must have been frightened, but please don't hold it against her. I don't mind. You don't need to apologize for her. Haha, your Highness is as calm as ever. So then, you sought a private audience before the banquet. You must have something to say. Yes. Regarding the matter of usurping the throne, I wanted to carefully inquire about your Highness's thoughts. Have you considered when would be most appropriate? Marquis Hasna made no attempt to hide his rebellious intentions. Keelong also didn't mince words, directly asking the key point. Indeed, I can't hide anything from your Highness. The new palace will be completed this winter. Wouldn't staging the rebellion then be perfect? After all, many nobles have already sided with us. But the Empress will give birth to a prince next spring. We might not only face internal division, we could potentially trigger rebellions from surrounding countries. Your Highness makes a good point. At this rate, there might be spies, but we've been preparing for a long time. The nobles' dissatisfaction with the Emperor isn't something recent. Marquis Hasna, when you speak of the nobles' dissatisfaction, isn't it just that you want to clear all obstacles before Lady Esther's marriage? You needn't say more. Help me become Emperor quickly, and your only daughter can become an untainted true Empress. Haha, your Highness, are you joking? The joke has gone far enough. It's been a while since we met. I got a bit excited. I know what you're worried about. I'll consider the timing carefully. Thank you, your Highness. However, there's one more thing I must let you know. My alliance with you isn't just to make my child Empress. From the beginning, I chose you as my lord. Well, thank you for that. Just as Hasna left the hall, guards anxiously came forward to inquire about the situation, but Hasna understood better than anyone that Keelong despised the Emperor more than anyone else. The emperor had repeatedly sent him to the battlefield. Rather than being manipulated, for him, usurping the throne was the best choice. Otherwise, he wouldn't have agreed to the marriage with Esther. Moreover, the Grand Duke harbored deep hatred for Emperor Bal. So you can rest assured about this cooperation. Although Hasna knew about Qilong's hatred for the emperor, but he forgot that when the emperor forced him to kill his master. Marquis Hasna had done quite a bit to fan the flames on the side. It was he who told the elder brother that Qilong was having nightmares because he killed his master, thus resulting in even more cruel abuse. The emperor brother drew out a long whip to punish him. Marquis Hasna would never know that the door he obediently closed was Qilong's final plea. Qilong always remembered this. Yet now he claimed with open eyes that he had always been his lord. How absurd indeed. Your Highness, do you have time now? A maid said Lady Esther and the little mermaid were walking together in the garden earlier. Esther's attitude in the marketplace had been problematic, yet she still couldn't resist personally confirming, Your Highness. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have allowed Shia to go out. Should we lock her in her room now? Esther is a clever woman. She must want to know if Shia poses a threat to her position. If we step in to protect her now, it wouldn't be good. It's better to observe quietly like this and let her know I'm not interested in Shia. The maid gently brushed Esther's golden hair. Annie was brought before her. She finally turned around. Your Shia's maid? Did you need something from me, my lady? Annie was already covered in cold sweat after saying this. Don't be so afraid. I just want to be friends with Sia. In a few days, there will be a masquerade ball at the palace. I think it would be interesting to have her participate. So could you bring her? My lady, she's not feeling well. Annie responded very nervously, but she absolutely could not agree to let the Marquis's daughter see Shia. Count Ian had specifically instructed earlier that nothing regarding Shia could be decided without permission. She was someone special to the Grand Duke and absolutely could not be taken away casually by others. So, you're saying no? Yes, I'm really sorry. Sorry is quite amusing. The maid suddenly grabbed Annie's arms. She was forced to kneel on the ground. Esther looked down at her. I'm not asking you now, I'm ordering you. I think we can discuss this again. You don't need to be so stubborn. Even if there's no trust between us. But what can we do? I heard you have 3 younger siblings who need your support. Annie's face grew increasingly grave as she listened. The Grand Duke achieved countless military merits on the battlefield at such a young age. Don't you think your brothers could learn a lot if they went to the battlefield too? Brothers were Annie's only remaining family. She couldn't let them risk their lives. Annie grabbed Esther's skirt, trying to make her spare them. Esther's goal was very clear. It's not that I don't want to help you. After all, real combat experience teaches more. This was clearly a threat from Esther. If Annie didn't agree to help, her brothers would suffer. She agreed through her tears. Esther showed the victorious smile of a winner. Annie, I look forward to your performance. Several days later, the masquerade ball arrived. Annie applied makeup to Shia's face, then dressed the little mermaid in a pink butterfly ball gown. When the preparations were almost complete, Annie wanted to sneak away with her things. But the little mermaid looked at her in confusion. Miss, I mentioned before that this week is the Autumn Harvest Festival. Annie told me about it. There are many amazing things, flowers and all kinds of sweets. Miss, today is the last day, and there will be a grand ball in the evening. You'll attend that ball too, wearing a mask and dancing, meeting many people. Annie, does that mean I can see Qilong? There was a knock at the door, making Annie jump. She wanted to tell the little mermaid the truth with a stern face. But Esther's maid had already entered. Miss, Lady Esther requests Miss Xia's presence. Are you all ready? Lady Esther? Yes. My lady hopes you'll come right away. The maid looked at Xia's bare feet. Though it's cool in the evening during summer, wearing shoes is still necessary. All right, please wait. Annie pulled at the little mermaid's feet to put on shoes. Annie, I don't want to wear them, miss. Just endure it for today. And maybe you'll see the Grand Duke at the ball. When you see him, make sure to ask him for help, okay? Annie whispered instructions to Xia. Xia listened in a daze. The maid hurriedly pulled her to the ballroom doors, ignoring her protests. From now on, you must wear this. The little mermaid obediently put on the red mask. It was a strange day, and she didn't understand what was happening. Everything was so odd, and she didn't know if she would really see Qilong. As soon as she entered the grand hall, the little mermaid was amazed, and was told to keep walking towards the center, but she didn't notice a strange man approaching from behind. Are you lost? I want to find Qilong. Can you tell me where Qilong is? You mean His Highness? Two masked men whispered to each other, "Isn't this the pink-haired one who was with the Grand Duke outside the city? My goodness, who is this person, wearing such a lowly dancer's mask? I heard you returned to the castle with His Highness. Perhaps she's a dancer His Highness brought for the ball? Ha ha ha, I see." As expected of His Highness, he really knows how to entertain us. The group of men let out unpleasant laughter. Someone even directly grabbed Shia's hair in public. Shia kept backing away nervously. At this moment, Esther suddenly grabbed her from behind, whispering in her ear, "Shia, it seems you still don't understand your position. Now feel how they want you. Isn't it the same as His Highness' attitude towards you?" Esther pushed Shia forward forcefully, ignoring her struggles. Finally, Shia was pushed out and fell right into a masked man's arms. The Grand Duke immediately recognized the startled little mermaid. He angrily pulled her away from the ball. Esther forcefully pushed Xia back into the ballroom. Fortunately, the little mermaid fell right into Qilong's arms. Although the man wore a white mask covering his face, the aura he emanated still let the little mermaid recognize him. "Qilong, you're Qilong," the little mermaid excitedly called out the man's name. However, Qilong angrily grabbed her hand and walked outside. The men at the ball who didn't understand wanted to stop him, but were completely deterred by one sentence. "That person seems to be the Grand Duke, but I don't know why he suddenly became so angry." Esther watched coldly without saying a word. "Xia, I remember telling you to stay put. Why do you keep doing things I tell you not to do?" "Qilong, I missed you, so I came to see you." "Is that so? You appear at this kind of occasion wearing such clothes, and now you tell me you missed me. Do you really want me to treat you like that?" Qilong forcefully gripped the little mermaid's chin. Then he punished her with a forceful kiss. Xia couldn't describe what this feeling was, but she liked it and felt it wasn't nearly enough. But at this moment, Qilong suddenly stopped, his tone full of resignation. "Xia, I'm giving you one last chance to go back obediently." The little mermaid was completely shocked, unable to accept such an arrangement. "Qilong, I miss you so much. Will you still come to my room? Don't you feel curious about me at all?" the little mermaid said, one pitiful sentence after another. But Qilong still remained cruel to her. "Xia, you seem to have misunderstood something. You're not that important to me. We never had any relationship from the start, even if you have some special feelings for me. Don't bother me anymore in the future. The feelings you think exist are just your own delusion." Qilong heartlessly abandoned the little mermaid and left. Xia looked at the garden scenery, her mood sinking to rock bottom. Making such a scene at the banquet, yet the female lead is hiding here. Esther couldn't help but smile wickedly. "Since it's your first time attending a banquet, I gave you special consideration, especially for this masquerade ball, do you know? The mask you're wearing is a style used by dancing girls, and dancing girls are just lowly entertainers at banquets. The Duke probably didn't ask you why you wore this mask, because in his eyes you're just a lower-class person. Esther, you hate me. It's not hate, just hoping you won't overreach yourself. What about wanting to have the Duke's child? I want Qilong's child, but you can't have it. You're just the Duke's toy, a disposable plaything that won't matter if broken. What's the point of dressing up beautifully? Even if others play with you, it's just due to possessiveness. Xia, no one stays with a doll forever. When he gets bored, you'll be thrown away. So now you've been abandoned by the Duke." Abandoned. The little mermaid's heart ached terribly upon hearing such words. She had always known about the word abandonment. Mermaids who couldn't have children would all be called abandoned, and abandoned mermaids could never return to the sea. So now things between Qilong and me are over too. After Qilong coldly rejected the little mermaid, he became lifeless, as if his soul had been lost. His mind kept flashing back to Xia's words of longing. Esther kept following behind him. "Your Highness, why do you keep standing there? Did you lose something?" "But it seems I was wrong. You haven't lost anything." Qilong actually didn't like this woman Esther much, but had to pretend to be cordial due to royal power issues. "Is that so? Thank you for your concern. Then, can your Highness grant me one request? Dance with me today. They say couples who dance the last dance at the Harvest Thanksgiving banquet will find eternal happiness, maybe even lasting a lifetime. Your Highness, I believe you'll agree, right?" Esther's face was full of yearning for the future. This made Qilong very confused, since with his status, there was no need to do this. "Esther, I don't understand your meaning." Qilong didn't choose to directly answer Esther, who confidently believed there was still hope. Your Highness, let me put it this way. I can ignore other unimportant lovers, but if someone deliberately bumps into my chest and provokes me, even a woman you still protect everywhere, I can't be so generous. So, Your Highness, do you really not plan to take my hand? Esther presumptuously expressed her love to Qilong, but Qilong completely ignored it. He left with just an apology. Esther went crazy upon hearing these words, standing in the wind, laughing maniacally. At this time, Zia came alone to their previous seaside spot. Having children was a very difficult thing in the mermaid clan. Almost no one succeeded on the first try. When coming ashore, Zia had been warned that if things didn't go smoothly or there was danger, she should return to the sea immediately. For their mermaid clan, children were most important, Esther said. If Zia had a child, Qilong would immediately kill her, so even if she gave birth to a child, she would be in extreme danger. Zia decided to give up on Qilong and seek a new partner, and now the most important thing was to return to the sea, back to her sisters. If they asked about her experience, she would say she almost died, getting tangled in a fishing net. She met Qilong, but mistakenly thought he was her mate. Zia stood by the sea preparing to painfully cut ties with the man. However, at this moment, a familiar voice came from behind Qilong, angrily grabbed her hand. Since when did the sea become your private space? His tone full of strong displeasure. The little mermaid looked at him in disbelief. He was the one who abandoned her first, and now he was blaming others. She struggled strongly in unhappiness. But this completely ignited the flame of anger in the man's heart. I told you not to act on your own, Zia. This is the last chance. Not wanting to hear what Zia had to say, he wrapped one arm around her waist and forcefully lifted her onto horseback. Qilong, wait, shut up, don't say anything right now. Qilong angrily covered Zia's mouth. Only then did the little mermaid feel his rapid breathing. She didn't understand why he was doing this. Qilong, if you don't want me anymore, then let me go. Who said I don't want you? I don't understand what you're saying. Let's talk when we get back to the castle. The little mermaid now completely didn't dare believe his words, but in fact she still loved the man very much. So a bold idea formed in her mind. She wanted to confirm if the man could become her mate. So she unhesitatingly took the initiative to kiss Qilong's mouth. She wanted to have Qilong's child. But the man suddenly pressed her down on horseback. Zia looked at the man's handsome face and couldn't help but feel shy. She liked having intimate contact with Qilong. However, she hadn't expected such time would last an entire night. When she woke up, the hand that had been tightly held yesterday was trembling. Zia stared puzzled at the white pearls on the pillow, but her movement woke up Qilong beside her. Qilong pulled the little mermaid's body closer into his embrace. Why did you wake up so early? I let you off yesterday when I saw you faint, so do you have energy now? No, Qilong. Look at the pearls on my hand. Are they real pearls? The precious stones that only the sea goddess can obtain. So it's true that mermaid tears turn into pearls. Zia obediently lay on top of Qilong like a child. He couldn't help but stroke her pink short hair. Zia, have you cried in front of Duke Bael? After all, he would surely find ways to torment you to get pearls. Qilong, it tickles. We usually don't cry. So do humans cry often? Qilong, when have you cried? The little mermaid's casual question made him pause. Back then, his master had wholeheartedly taught him, but in the end he killed him with his own hands. His beloved little fox also fell under his sword. At that time, Qilong shed countless tears, probably when sad or in pain. But my tears won't become gems, so crying is an especially useless expression. Useless? Zia didn't understand. However, Qilong suddenly leaned down to kiss her again. The little mermaid was very excited. I want Qilong's child, so I want more. For several days in a row. Qilong stayed with the little mermaid. Ian was somewhat anxious. Your Highness, how long do you plan to stay here? Qilong was very impatient. Do I have time restrictions on staying in my own castle? But Your Highness, this is the villa Marquis Hesna waited for you all night in the office. Oh, is that so? It seems the Marquis already knows what will happen. Your Highness, Marquis Hesna will be unhappy if you keep staying here. So what? The banquet will end peacefully on its own? Why did you come here to blame me? But Your Highness, aren't you about to hold the wedding with Miss Hesna? So I think you'd better be more careful. Ian, I've been thinking for a long time. Whether it's Marquis Hesna or her daughter, and you seem to have misunderstood something. Now they are the ones who need us. It's not us who need them. Although Kilong said this, Ian was still worried. Ian, you can spread false news saying you and the Marquis want to rebel. Since you can't do it, Ian, remember this. Planting the victory flag on the battlefield isn't everything. Coming back alive is the final victory. Don't just look at immediate benefits when taking action. We've come all this way with much effort. Don't waste our previous efforts over small issues. Kilong's eyes held a fierce look as he said these words. Annie excitedly shouted at the palace. The place where the Little Mermaid now lived was the villa in Triton City. It was built by the previous queen. All the wallpaper and furniture in the villa looked like new miss. I heard the Grand Duke grew up here since childhood. She must have brought you here with deep meaning. Annie, I'm not very clear about that. I'm sorry, I was too excited. Then does Annie like it here? Of course, miss, you don't know that being able to work in the Grand Duke's own home is a great honor for us maids. According to the original rules, I wouldn't possibly appear here. Earl Ian told me Miss was looking for me. He said you insisted on keeping me and no one else. But I committed such a big mistake against you. Annie felt very guilty about the previous betrayal. But for Zia, coming here was very good. She had really missed Annie these many days. This made Annie truly ashamed. She knelt on the ground, apologizing to the Little Mermaid. Woo, woo, woo. Miss, you don't know how much I regretted letting you go. I won't let such things happen again. Annie kept crying with tears. Zia was somewhat worried. Annie, are you all right, miss? I'm completely fine. Are you going to take a bath now? Let me brush your hair first. Kilong appeared at the doorway at some point. No need to dress up so carefully. Ah, it's the Grand Duke Kilong. The Little Mermaid excitedly rushed over upon seeing him. She tightly hugged his waist. Kilong, I missed you so much. He picked up the Little Mermaid princess style. Shia, have you been good today? Such behavior was really embarrassing, Kilong. You're holding me too high, put me down quickly. Annie, seeing things developing inappropriately, very tactfully slipped away. Thankfully, rose petals were scattered in the bathtub. The Little Mermaid's feet didn't turn into a tail when placed in the water. Kilong felt puzzled. Zia, so does the tail only appear in the sea? Yes, strange water doesn't cause it. Hearing such an answer, Kilong was very happy. He intimately nibbled on the Little Mermaid's back. As long as it's not the sea, the Little Mermaid can't escape. Such intense intimacy was too much for the Little Mermaid to handle. She pushed away. Kilong, who was leaning against her back in embarrassment. My body and legs hurt. Is it because of me? Of course it's you. As soon as the words left her mouth, Kilong leaned over again, lovingly planted several kisses on the Little Mermaid's mouth. Then, what should I do? Should I apologize and say sorry? She shyly lowered her head. He's really too handsome. Even if I tried to lie to him, I couldn't say I don't want it. Zia, as long as you sing me a lullaby, I promise I won't do anything else. You mean sing here? Kilong intimately nuzzled her shoulder. Yes, right here. The two cuddled sweetly in the water. The Little Mermaid's sweet voice filled the air. Kilong's irritation slowly faded, but the song suddenly stopped. The Little Mermaid coughed a couple times uncomfortably. Kilong, there's a strange smell here. Spicy, that's the smell of fire, Annie once told me. Fire is very dangerous. It really hurts when people get close. Shia, do you know, when I was 5, I almost burned to death in this villa. I didn't expect to find memories from back then in this way today. Wouldn't burning to death be very dangerous for Kilong? Did you get hurt anywhere? It was in this very room. To celebrate his soon-to-be-born nephew, young Kilong stayed up late carving a wooden sword by hand. However, just when he was full of joy, a scream came from outside. Your Highness, quickly leave this place. The villa is on fire. The entire villa was engulfed in a serious fire. Young Kilong was held in his nanny's arms as they rushed out of the room. But the fire was too intense and they were knocked down by a falling beam. The guard quickly took him. Your Highness, I'll carry you. We need to get out of here quickly. Young Kilong's eyes were full of fear. If they risked escaping like this, something would surely go wrong. Everyone would likely lose their lives. Young Kilong pulled down a piece of cloth from nearby. Use this to cover your face. Absolutely don't rush to escape through the original path. Finally, they managed to escape from death's door with great difficulty. But the fire didn't spare the villa. Young Qilong didn't understand how such a heavily guarded palace could catch fire. The guard was also helpless. When he was patrolling the second-floor corridor, he discovered fire at the door of his bedroom, but there was nothing flammable nearby. It was clearly someone trying to take his life. Young Qilong thought of his most respected older brother. Because young Qilong had refused to meet with the queen several times, his older brother believed Qilong wasn't showing respect to his queen. But how could young Qilong think that way? He just felt the queen had been quite tired lately, and now it was almost time for her to give birth. He just didn't want to disturb her and wanted to leave time for her to rest. His older brother wouldn't listen to warnings and became even more angry because young Qilong hadn't called the unborn child Crown Prince, rising angrily from his chair. Remember this. He's not just a child or your brother, but the prince who will rule this empire. You know your attitude always makes me laugh. Born carrying various suspicions, I took pity on you and personally raised you. But you have the power to control the entire empire, so I'm very afraid I fear that someday you'll kill me to usurp my position. If I had known it would end like this, I shouldn't have kept you from the beginning. So his older brother was still afraid of Qilong. In the end, unable to overcome his fears, he decided to kill his brother. Actually, in young Qilong's eyes, he wasn't pitiful. His older brother was the most pitiful person in the world. He actually suspected his brother would kill him. At first, he attributed his brother's abnormal behavior to being too oppressed on the battlefield, causing mental instability. To prove his brother wrong, Qilong worked even harder to prove himself with ability. But later he understood his brother was right. Qilong eventually killed his beloved older brother. The Little Mermaid's song echoed in his mind. Just like she herself, warm enough to help drive away all the troubles in his heart. Unsurprisingly, Qilong fell asleep again to the Little Mermaid's singing. The grandfather's family of Duke Barton had started internal unrest. Yes, they refused the lord sent by your highness. They advocate for independence of their territory on a very large scale. The lord alone cannot suppress them. All right, since something has happened, we must take responsibility. Deploy a fleet similar to last time. Depart at dawn tomorrow. But Ian, you stay behind. You stay here to monitor Zia well. Don't let her cause terrible things like last time. Your Highness, I understand that. What about the thing I asked you to have the alchemist make? Your Highness, is it this? The message just came that it's completed, so I brought it over for you. Qilong opened the blue box. Inside was an exquisitely made ankle bracelet that was an important tool for keeping mermaids. Qilong told the Little Mermaid he would be going out soon. Sia's whole body clung to his embrace. She really didn't want the man to leave. Fortunately, Qilong said things would be handled quickly, and he'd return soon. The Little Mermaid became lively again, acting cute and silly, saying she wanted to have a baby. Qilong didn't agree immediately. Instead, pinched her mouth playfully. Zia's chubby little face puffed up in anger. I want a child. When Qilong had no reaction for a long time, she took matters into her own hands, but she ended up arousing the man until he couldn't take it anymore. Zia, wait, I want Qilong's child. Is that not okay? Ever since Esther said, even if she bore Qilong's child, she and the child would end up dying by the man's hand. Zia had been constantly anxious about this, but she still wanted to personally confirm if what Esther said was true or false. Zia was willing to trust Qilong. She selfishly wanted him to become a man who belonged only to her. Zia, you're just a mermaid, yet you want to have my child. Qilong was really speechless. He easily rested his head on the Little Mermaid's neckline, taking advantage. While she wasn't paying attention, he forcefully put the ankle bracelet on Zia's foot. Zia asked in surprise what that was. Qilong laughed and answered that it was an ankle bracelet. It suits you well, Zia. He lovingly pecked the Little Mermaid's cheek. Next time I'll get you something similar for your neck. So Zia, you'd better not think about going near the seaside at all in the future. Don't forget my words. Zia opened her big eyes, listening to his words seriously. But she didn't understand what the ankle bracelet meant for her. She simply thought it was a gift from the man. With Qilong away, Zia was alone in the castle again. Her whole being was gloomy. She took Annie to find Ian, saying she wanted to go out. However, she was strictly forbidden by him. Zia really yearned for the sea. She blinked her captivating big eyes, acting cute. But I'm so bored staying here, can't I even walk along the shore? Annie also helped speak up for her. Earl Ian, the Grand Duke, has been away from the castle for a month. You don't know how bored the mermaid lady has been lately. Ian felt very awkward about this, but I heard she's been busy learning in the dining room recently, but that's only once or twice. You can't have the lady practice with knife and fork all day. Besides, the lady learning dining etiquette is for the Grand Duke. With no other choice, the little mermaid had to use her killer move. I just miss him. Maybe I can see Keelong's ship at the seaside. Really, can't I go? Or you could come along too. Ian hadn't expected Zia to say this. In the end, he was defeated by the Little Mermaid, confusedly going to the seaside together. The Little Mermaid was extraordinarily happy to reach the sea, but after a while she was stopped by Annie. Miss absolutely cannot go far today. Zia's face sank in unhappiness. Annie, do humans really hate the sea? Why do they always prevent me from getting close, miss? It's not because of hate. But for people of Triton, the sea is homeland but also the most fearsome existence. It made me forever lose my father. We have to be careful again and again. All right, Annie. The Little Mermaid looked helplessly toward the sea, but then a group of dolphins jumped up from the water surface. Annie is Indonesian, miss. Do you mean goldfish? Yes, and maybe they know me. Annie, let me introduce you to Indiana. After saying this, the Little Mermaid ignored Annie's obstruction. Ian saw this and ran anxiously to Annie's side. He shouted loudly for help. The ankle bracelet on Miss Zia's foot is made of aurite. It will expand and turn into a gem once it touches seawater. The Little Mermaid's feet didn't turn into a tail like usual when she jumped into the sea. Affected by gravity, her body kept sinking toward the bottom. She recalled Keelong's words, "Zia, you'd better not go near the sea again in the future." In her naivety, she thought it was because she broke her promise to the man that she was being rejected by the sea. So am I going to die now? Keelong swam quickly to the Little Mermaid's side. He managed to embrace her out of the water just as she was losing consciousness. Annie was crying messily on the shore. They breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing Keelong. Keelong held Zia, feeling really angry. She gave him such a big surprise right when he returned Zia. So you have to challenge my patience. He hurriedly brought her back to the villa. Even after she woke up, he was still keeping watch by the bed. The Little Mermaid was really scared this time. With Keelong here, she felt full of security. She wanted to get up and stick close to the man, clingy, but the man wouldn't let her. She almost drowned now. Is not the time to fool around. After saying this, he was going to settle accounts with Zia about this escape attempt. To prevent her from moving around, his hand forcefully pressed down on her foot. I told you not to go. Why did you still do that? Because you're an animal, so you don't understand human words? Zia looked at the serious-faced man and panicked, anxiously explaining that it was because there were whale friends in the sea. However, this explanation not only failed to gain Keelong's understanding, but further provoked his anger. He forcefully pinched her skin, ignoring the Little Mermaid's weak condition. The Little Mermaid called for him to let go in resistance. He acted as if he hadn't heard. His tone grew increasingly fierce. Zia, I don't like the same thing happening twice. Remember, I won't be able to save you every time. The Little Mermaid was so wronged, she just wanted to say hello to her whale friends. Seeing this silly little expression, Keelong couldn't help but laugh. Since explaining was useless, the Little Mermaid started acting coquettish. This trick worked very well as the man easily embraced her again. When the passion dispersed, the Little Mermaid lay tiredly on the bed. Keelong gently pecked her cheek using a doting tone to call her to get up. The Little Mermaid dazedly rubbed her eyes. I'll have the servants bring in food. But Keelong, why aren't you taking it off? The Little Mermaid's eyes were confused, not knowing what she was saying. Keelong really didn't understand. I didn't see you take off your clothes. I want to see. She boldly put her hand on his chest, gesturing. Keelong helplessly flicked her forehead with his finger. Stop talking nonsense and get up to eat. Wow, it's actually food. To use utensils and eat like Keelong, Sha had practiced for a long time while he was away campaigning. So despite how much Keelong tried to persuade her, she insisted on using utensils. But unexpectedly, she embarrassed herself as soon as she got them. Jia, you're holding the utensils backwards. Okay, now it's right. The Little Mermaid tried tremblingly to pierce a piece of fish, but it slipped away unsuccessfully. Xia was extremely nervous. It had gone so smoothly before. Why wasn't it working today? Keelong, watching, also felt anxious, gently holding her hand, teaching bit by bit. His mouth also didn't forget to praise that she had indeed improved. Actually, Xia was so persistent because she had ulterior motives. She wanted to eat in the same way as Keelong. That way he would be happier, and the little mermaid could see his smile. She really missed this man every single day. But the emperor's birthday was approaching. Keelong had to leave for a month. A month was an endless time. The little mermaid didn't want Keelong to leave and proposed to go with him. Keelong really couldn't bear to see his beloved girl sad. Without hesitation, he agreed to her proposal. According to the agreement, Keelong brought Sha along to set out for the palace. Annie excitedly looked out the carriage window. There were many soldiers following to the palace, so the journey would take relatively longer. Palace was a new word Sha had never heard. Sha curiously asked Annie what it was. Miss, that's where His Majesty the Emperor lives. In the Empire, the only person with higher status than His Highness is His Majesty the Emperor, even higher than Keelong. It doesn't matter. Keelong is more handsome, the little mermaid pouted. Defending Keelong, Annie was really amused by her. Annie does the lady like His Highness. That much. Jia nodded shyly. I like Keelong very much. So you like him even though His Highness often bullies you. Miss, do you know, your ankle almost had a serious problem. Speaking of ankles, the little mermaid self-consciously covered it with her skirt. Annie, I'm fine. But miss, don't you want to return to the sea? The sea is Shia's home. But she chose to stay by Keelong's side in order to bear a mermaid child. But Shia understood that now she seemed to be wavering, rather than saying she stayed only for a child. In fact, she more wanted to confirm if Keelong was her destined love. Wanting to have Keelong's child was false. All along, she just wanted this man. Keelong, do you love His Highness? When the little mermaid decided to come ashore, she had been warned by her sisters not to fall in love with humans. Humans and fish had always been two different creatures. There was only one chance. When successful, one must leave. The little mermaid couldn't answer Annie's question. She pretended to have a headache to brush it off. Annie hugged her gently. Miss, it's all right. No matter what choice you make in the end, I will always stay by your side. Because it was dark, the troops temporarily needed to make camp. But Keelong was constantly uneasy. Ian reported the arranged matters were already prepared. The little mermaid stayed in a second-floor bedroom. They assigned 5 soldiers to guard for this. But Keelong wasn't at ease and added 2 more people. Ian felt he was being a bit excessive. But the traces on the road were very obvious and not at an intersection. Besides, the hunting season was already over. The tracks on this mountain path were clearly left by them. Your Highness, I understand. Then I'll arrange to extinguish the fires to create the illusion. Everyone is asleep. Just be ready to prevent attacks at any time. Especially remind the soldiers around the bedroom to be more careful. Annie, wake up. Shia anxiously shook Annie on the bed. Annie lazily opened her eyes. Miss, what happened so late at night? I heard strange sounds. It seems something happened outside. The sound, could it be? Annie thought of terrible consequences, startled completely awake. On the open ground, Keelong and the soldiers fought hard to repel the attackers. The little mermaid upstairs was nervous to the point of throat tightening when she saw clubs about to fall on the man. She rushed from the bedroom to the corridor without regard for anything. Keelong, be careful. No, it's too dangerous. You come back in quickly. If this continues, Keelong will get hurt. I must do something for him. The little mermaid's gaze locked onto the vase placed outside. Tell us who sent you. You not saying is useless. We all know clearly whose orders these are. Since that's the case, then obediently give up your lives. Don't blame us. This is what the Imperial Sun wants. The masked man charged over with a dagger. Fortunately, he was hit by the falling vase. Keelong took advantage to take him down. But that action quickly made the enemies target Zia upstairs. Keelong was extremely worried. Unfortunately, they had superior numbers. In seconds, they appeared on the second floor. The little mermaid and Annie were forcibly cornered. They hugged each other tightly, trembling all over. The man thrust his sword at the critical moment Keelong arrived. The enemies were all captured, but he stood there motionless, covered in blood, because such disregard for her own safety made Keelong feel very angry. The little mermaid nervously paced back and forth in the room. Hearing the door open, she immediately ran over Keelong. I was so worried about you. The man didn't acknowledge her. His tone instead very serious. Do my words have no meaning to you at all? Keelong got increasingly agitated. suddenly grabbing the little mermaid in front of him. "Do you know what you did? You almost disappeared right in front of me." The little mermaid had also done this, worried about the man. She felt wronged too. "Keelong, I'm sorry. I was also afraid you would get hurt. Just wanted to help you. You don't need to worry at all. They were just assassins sent by the Emperor." "Emperor?" The little mermaid didn't quite understand Keelong's words. The man turned away, laughing scornfully. Maybe he just wanted to see how useful the dog he raised was, or wanted to train me, this loyal hound, even pushed to the edge. "I still won't bite back at my master." "Why are you looking at me like that? No need to sympathize. I've always been this way." The little mermaid looked at Keelong's expression, her heart aching terribly, though he had said this before too. But Keelong was very sad now. It definitely wasn't her imagination. The little mermaid grabbed his hand. Keelong was special to her. She hoped Keelong wouldn't be sad or grieved, and didn't want to see him injured. Zia took Keelong's hand and kissed it. Keelong looked at her in complete shock. The little mermaid hurriedly explained, afraid he would misunderstand. "I'm not sympathizing with you." Seeing he didn't believe her. The little mermaid soothingly kissed his lips. The next day, Keelong brought the little mermaid to the palace. She excitedly shouted, "Keelong, look, there are flowers everywhere. It's so beautiful and big, even bigger than Kryton. But the most amazing is still Keelong, right?" "What?" Realizing what the little mermaid meant. Keelong shyly lowered his head, dotingly scolding her for thinking nonsense. At this time, a soldier walked over. "Your Highness, His Majesty orders you to come over immediately upon arrival." Keelong held the little mermaid tightly behind him. "Ian, I leave her to you." "Yes, Your Highness. I'll handle things here." The little mermaid was bewilderedly taken away by Ian. Keelong followed orders, walking toward the palace hall. That group photo still hung on the wall. The soldier looked at the throne, but there was no one there. "Your Highness, sorry. His Majesty hasn't gotten up yet." Keelong was already used to it. He wasn't angry at the soldier, instead turned to look at other photos on the wall. Back then, the little prince was more innocent and lovely, chasing after Keelong's bottom every day, calling him uncle. But later, his brother discovered this and became furiously angry. "No, who is this?" The Emperor staggered out, holding a wine bottle. "Isn't this my beloved uncle? Long time no see, Your Majesty. Why be so distant between us?" The Emperor walked casually to Keelong's side. However, faced with such boring tricks, Keelong appeared very impatient, briefly replying, it wasn't a big deal. The dramatic Emperor, hearing such an indifferent response, suddenly started acting. "Do you know how worried I was about you? I thought I had lost you like this." Keelong had no intention of listening further, immediately interrupting, saying, "Your concerns have all been resolved." This made his nephew, the Emperor, very dissatisfied. "Uncle, do you know? You're like a person without a soul. You don't laugh or cry. I've never seen you get angry either. You used to be Father's puppet. Now you're my dog. Father said you were a lion and he feared someday you would tear him apart. But in fact, Uncle is just a hunting dog who doesn't want to be trained, doesn't know his own preferences. So of course he can't be tamed. But how could a dog kill its own master, right? My beloved uncle." The Emperor cared nothing for Keelong's thoughts, raised the wine bottle in his hand and smashed it on his head. Keelong stood dazed, expressionless. The Emperor was satisfied. Seeing such an obedient appearance, Keelong had no way to stop it, could only make excuses about having nothing to say and needing to leave first. But things weren't as simple as he thought. The Emperor's tone became very serious. "I have something to ask of you. The Makaran Kingdom heard news of the Queen's pregnancy and sent an envoy group to visit Uncle. Happens to be going to the western border to welcome them. I believe you can do it." "Just like before you would do anything?" I asked. The little mermaid joyfully picked flowers in the garden when suddenly stopped by Annie, because she had again forgotten to wear shoes when coming out. "This isn't Triton. You must wear shoes no matter what." Annie was really furious. The little mermaid guiltily explained. Shoes made her feet uncomfortable, but Annie wouldn't be fooled by her. She ordered the little mermaid to stay put while she went to get her shoes, repeatedly emphasizing, "Don't wander off before leaving." The little mermaid verbally agreed very well, but upon seeing beautiful butterflies flying in the sky, she immediately forgot Annie's words. She excitedly chased after the butterflies running along. Unknowingly, she entered a new garden. The Emperor frowned as he looked at her. The butterfly happened to fly in his direction. The Emperor slowly rose lazily from under the tree. Just what ignorant creature dares to intrude here? The simple little mermaid didn't hear the anger in his words, but was very surprised, staring at his face. Wow, so beautiful. This was Sia's first time seeing glowing hair. She suspected he was the elf her mermaid sisters had mentioned. Sia quietly stepped closer. Are you an elf? The emperor looked utterly incredulous. What nonsense are you babbling about? How dare you address me this way? Do you know who I am? Just as he finished speaking, the emperor saw the glowing ankle bracelet on Sia's foot. That was Gia, right? Clearly Uncle was in the castle. Didn't expect he had such special preferences. The little mermaid still hadn't received an answer and asked again, So are you an elf? Perhaps out of curiosity about Uncle's woman. The emperor very obediently played along this time. Yes, I'm an elf. This is my first time seeing you here, so can you tell me your name? His sudden approach startled Sia. She awkwardly turned away. I'm called Sia. The thing on your ankle is very pretty. Seems you're quite favored. The emperor grabbed the little mermaid's ankle. The little mermaid didn't understand what he was saying, but she disliked his handsy behavior. She pushed away his hand, telling him to let go. Afraid he would suspect something, she hurriedly said. Annie was looking for her. The emperor's face showed disappointment. What a pity. Otherwise you could play fun things with me. Sia listened in confusion. There's nothing here. Then let's play next time. Next time. The emperor meaningfully watched Sia as he made the appointment to play together. Late at night, Ian burst anxiously into Zia's room. How does His Majesty know the mermaid lady? Annie was startled by him. Earl, what are you saying? Now there's a very troublesome matter. His Majesty wants to summon the mermaid lady when His Highness isn't here. Just what happened?